when I was a Christian, which means like not only does God predestine people for heaven, he predestines them for hell. And I guess like you're like, well, of course that makes sense. Like, but some Christians believe he predestines those for heaven and doesn't predestine those for hell.
Lutherans.
Yeah, and you're kind of like, how does that work?
And they're like, we don't care.
So if God's like literally creating conscious, cognitive thinking souls for the sole purpose to throw them into hell and torture them for eternity. And for those listening, like who have like the cartoon concept of Satan, like Satan doesn't rule hell in Christianity. Like God does. And Satan's in there burning with you. He's not. Right. He's not like, it's not like the good angel, bad devil on your shoulder.
This is not dualism.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. You know, that was much more sort of a Christian borrowing of Zoroastrianism, as I understand the historicity of how you get to that kind of devil.
Yeah.
But that's not the Christian idea of Satan. Like Satan's in hell burning. The fallen angels are in hell burning. And then everybody, according to Calvin, who was predestined before the foundations of the world for hell is also in there burning, like consciously being tormented by this God who's supposed to be all loving and all powerful and all knowing. And that, I mean, that's a terrifying theology now that I'm out of it.
Yeah. It wasn't when you were in it though.
No, because I was part of the people that were going to heaven.
That's amazing. I would have in college identified as a Calvinist, but I was always cognizant of that arrogance of like I'm in the group that thankfully doesn't have to burn in hell. Like it colors the way that you interact with people.
Yeah.
And I know that I've heard a very popular atheist, the magician, what's his name?
Darren Brown?
No, the libertarian Penn. He's talked about like he's rebuked, conservative Christians for not doing more evangelism.
Yeah. Because
it's like if you really believe that people are going to hell, and I'm like, well, that's fine and dandy, but like, if people don't believe, they're not going to believe. It's not like people don't believe they're going to burn forever if they don't believe you. It's not like you telling them or not telling them is going to make that much of a difference. But I get it. I get his point is that I think what he's really trying to say is, are you sure that you're as zealous for your own beliefs as you think you are? Because if you were, then you would just be spending all your time, or you don't care about people at all.
Right.
And that's the terrifying thought to me, is that I was surrounded by people that, I had to wonder, like, do you care about people that disagree with you? Or do you have a theology that allows you to sort of revel in your introversion and just really not care?
Yeah. Ironically, I think some of the groups that I think most Christians would say aren't Christian, but they say they are. So I'm thinking of Mormons and Jehovah's Witnesses. Mm-hmm. Like, they do evangelism, man.
Like, they do it really well.
I mean, I think they do it poorly. Well, I mean, and what I mean by that is like, even like before I was a Christian, I had Jehovah's Witnesses knock on my door when I was a Christian, and since I deconverted, and never in any of those times was I like, oh yeah, that makes sense.
Let me backtrack. I don't know about Jehovah's Witness. I don't know if they do it well, and I'm not defining well according to what is true. Just basic effectiveness. The Mormons, especially in the Middle West, that the Mormon church is growing, and
I believe it was when I deconverted. It was the fastest growing Christian denomination,
and it's because they're serious about evangelism. Like, they send people out, and they do it. Granted, they do it in a culturally conservative context. It's not like the Mormon church is growing in New England. But
There's actually a very strong Mormon church here.
yeah,
So the first church I was part of before I started Vita Nova, we helped out at this thing called the Taste of Amherst, which is like all the restaurants would go in the center of town, and we did night security so that the restaurants could leave their refrigerators and stuff. And so the church volunteered, and there'd be like 5 of us, and would hang all night, and like they'd give us like a few dollars to do it. And by a few dollars, I mean, I think we got like 100 per shift per person. And we met this guy who we were trying to evangelize, and we had like talked to him. It was like 3 nights in a row, and it's like 2 a.m. And he just didn't want to leave his tent. And he invited us to a bike shop that he also owned to play Halo. And we're like, cool, what a great way to like evangelize. We're going to like get in this guy's shop.
so you guys were like evangelizing each other?
Yes. Yeah. So we show up, and like there's like 5 Mormon dudes playing Halo, who are like talking to us. And one guy owned a print shop in town, and the Mormon church in Amherst is like located right behind Frat Row. But there's a population. I don't know if they're growing, but just the other day I saw 2 Mormon missionaries outside of Amherst College, like walking and talking to people on the sidewalk.
Yeah.
So
I have actually been to like evangelical conferences about mission or evangelism. They don't call it evangelism now; they call it mission, but it's the same thing. And Mormons are often brought up. Somebody will inevitably, during the course of a 2-hour conference on mission, will bring up the way Mormons do things, and it's not complicated. It's just that they're persistent, and they don't care.
yeah,
They're there to convert you to their religion, and they're effective.
yeah, and I mean they're not self-conscious about it.
No.
Right? And I think part of that is the uniform. Like
Yep.
it's very distinct. So you see 2 18 to 20-year-old males in black pants, a white shirt, ties, carrying a Bible. You're like, no, they're Mormon.
Yeah.
Like, it's very much like when a priest walks down or a nun walks down the road.
Yep.
You're like, oh, they're Catholic. They're a
Yep.
priest. They're where most evangelicals, even Calvinists, like they're not. You don't know. Mm-hmm. There's no mark. I mean, maybe they have a fish on their windshield, or not windshield, back window or something like that. But there's when they knock on your door, which I don't think most evangelicals do. You just be like, oh, is this someone trying to sell me solar panels? Like, what's going on here?
Although I will say, I did an Acts 29 boot camp in Raleigh, North Carolina. I never ended up going through the whole process of becoming an Acts 29 church planner, but I did do boot camp in Raleigh, North Carolina, and I was getting coffee at one of the local coffee shops during the break, and the guy that worked there said, "Is there a Acts 29 conference going on?" I said, "Yeah, how'd you know?" He said, "The plaid shirts." No girls, young men in their 20s, plaid shirts, ordering coffee at hip new cafes. Nice. It's a dead giveaway. So maybe there's somewhat of a uniform.
Yeah, that's funny. Wow, tangents. So back to Calvinism. So I'm in it, like you said. Like, how could I believe that? Where you were more like cognitive, that there was like a dissonance here.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is really funny because I consider myself caring and compassionate, and I did do evangelism, not because I thought I could change the destiny of somebody, but because the only way to know if someone was predestined was to tell them, because then their soul would respond to the word, the gospel, and being what I would call a true believer, and like, I mean, I was giving out books, and we were in the town common in Amherst, like talking to the Druids, and like, here's a Bible, like let's walk through it, and inviting like my neighbors into my Bible studies in my house,
Yeah.
So part of the reason, though, I think it's dangerous is this disconnect of like inside outside. I also find if I meet a Christian who's really angry, I assume they're Calvinist. It doesn't mean there aren't nice Calvinists and there aren't grumpy Arminians or Catholics. It's just in my experience, in my world, in the worlds I ran in, the Calvinists were the ones who I was like, dude, this guy is like a jerk.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, I went to the Bible college that I went to was a Calvinistic Bible college, and there were constant debates about one point of Calvinism. Real quick, Calvinism is a system basically about salvation. Although I'd say it's a broader theological category, but there's such a thing as the 5 points of Calvinism, and the debate at my college was whether you could hold 4 points and still call yourself a Calvinist.
And the one that you could,
the one there was wiggle room on,
you could lose your salvation.
No, it was limited atonement.
Okay.
Whether or not Jesus died only for the elect.
Okay.
So 4-point Calvinists would say Jesus died for everyone, but he didn't elect everyone. And 5-point Calvinists would say, well, that doesn't make any sense, which they're right.
Yeah.
If there's a certain amount of group that's going to be saved, then that's the group of people Jesus died for. So.
Yeah, I think the 4-point Calvinists would say, well, like, I could pay everyone's dinner bill, but other people choose to pay it again. So, like, they're not allowing me to pay their debt.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good analogy. So that was the big debate on campus, and when I was in it, I didn't see it as being insular or mean, but I do recognize that those of us who were 5, and I was one of them while I was in Bible college, did have this reputation for being snobby, non-personal, a little too like into our intellects and into ourselves, and I mean it was pretty much all men.
Yeah,
I
mean that's typical of a Bible college.
Like there were
anyway though.
Even though that particular college had more, like twice as many females in it.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Twice as many females there as males. I guess we pastors are worth $100,000 as husbands. But
that's a little insider joke. When I was in seminary, they always joked that the single women there were trying to get their MRS degree,
yeah,
their misses, because especially in conservative Christianity, like the part I was a part of, and like Driscoll would straight up teach from the pulpit, like if your wife has to work, you're in sin. And some of these church planners, when we were on the church planning network site called The City, which was like a Facebook but only for people in Acts 29, they would post like, I distinctly remember a church planner talking about how his wife was working to help support the ministry, and like Driscoll like caps yelling that like he's in sin, and if he doesn't repent and get his wife out of the workforce so that she stays home and takes care of the kids like God designed, like Driscoll would potentially kick him out of the network. Like it was like
yeah, I don't even know. The idea that Reformed guys or Calvinists are jerks is sort of I don't want to say well established, because that makes it seem like I'm grounding it in truth, but that stereotype is well established, and in lots of people experience proves to be the case. But I've tried to eliminate as many toxic people from my life, and so whether they're Calvinist or not Christians, or doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And so it's been a while since it's hard for me to make a blanket statement about Calvinists being jerks. I'll just say that a lot of times the theological arguments in Reformed circles seem really minute when when you think about what's going on in our world in the big picture? Are